If you are a millennial or a zoomer and you ever enter a room with someone who is a boomer or a spiritual boomer, almost inevitably your job will be to provide tech support for that person. And when I say provide tech support, I mean provide tech support. You could be doing something else. Your wife could be giving birth. You could be doing a more urgent assignment at your workplace. You could be going to the wedding of your best friend. And it is your job as a millennial or a Zoomer to drop everything and just go over and save them. They have no agency, they have no ability to figure things out for themselves. You have to go and rescue them. And if you don't, it means you're an entitled millennial who doesn't respect your elders or some back in my day kind of nonsense. I just want to specify when I talk about this, I don't mean in general people who don't know how to do something. There's lots of stuff that I don't know how to do. There's lots of stuff at work I ask people about if I haven't done something before. I might say, "Hey, I haven't done this before. Could you just check this for me and let me know if I'm doing it right? And if I'm doing it wrong, could you maybe point out what I'm doing wrong so I can fix this up next time?" And then there's certain things that are just so technical that it's not realistic to expect somebody to be able to do. And maybe it's something that somebody's tried to learn and they just can't because they don't have the mental capacity or aptitude for it. I can't code. I've tried it before. I have a learning disability. I just find it extremely difficult to do anything like it. My issue isn't their ignorance. It's not that they don't know how to do something. It is the attitude that drives it. Most boomers and spiritual boomers I've met have something I like to call learned helplessness. That is, they have learned over their careers or their lives that if they just throw up their hands and cry, that a millennial or a zoomer will come to help them. And if one of them doesn't, then they will punish the closest one who did not offer them aid. It's generally speaking how I find it works. And like I said, if there is a millennial, even if they're busier, they have to drop everything. They have to come and save them. And once again, if you legit something's new to you, like maybe you're switching from a Mac over to a PC and you don't know how all the where all the locations are and where all the controls are and stuff like that. I mean, I get that. It can be kind of difficult sometimes. I don't mind showing people who are learning something new. My issue is a lot of them will just make no effort to do it. They refuse to like play around with a bit. They refuse to look it up on Google. They won't even read like the menu a lot of the time. Like I know an issue I often will get is just like, how do I open the file? You press the open button. What's the open button? It's the button that says open on it. What's the button that says open on it? It's the one that's right there. And they're like, oh, well, I didn't know there was a big button that said open on it. Or something like, and it's very clear oftentimes when you go to try to help them that they made zero effort to themselves. They didn't even try. They didn't even like read the menu that they're looking at and then get confused. It's just assumed that if I'm having any amount of trouble, it's the job of someone else to immediately bail me out. There's also often a general lack of basic intellectual curiosity where to me oftentimes if I don't know how to do something and it's something I think I might be able to do, then I'd like to learn how to do it. I'd like to, if I have to go ask somebody to do something, I'll get them to show me, and I might ask them to check it and give me some feedback so I can do it myself. I just think that that's a basic thing you should have, especially if something's your job and you're getting paid to do it. You should, on some level, if only for just your own psychological well being, want to be able to do things better and more efficiently. And very often, the skills you gain in one area of your life apply in other areas of your life. So maybe even if you don't give a shit about your company, something you learn there might help you out when you somewhere else. But there's with boomers and spiritual boomers, there's no intellectual curiosity. There's no desire, and I'm obviously generalizing. This is in 70 to 80% of cases I find. There's no like, oh, could you show me how to do this so I can do it in the future? Why does it work the way it does? Like any of that stuff, there's no desire to find it. It's just millennial, fix this for me. Millennial, do this for me. I don't care how it works. In fact, I don't want to know how it works because it's beneath me. It's like either, well, you're the kid, it's your job, even if you're in your 30s, to just do computer stuff because I was born before the internet was a thing, and I can't be expected to learn anything new. I can't be expected to do basic tasks that I get paid 80 grand a year to do. I know I've been working in this office setting with this program for like the last 20 to 30 years, but just because like of that doesn't mean I should know how to save a document, like how to use save as. That doesn't mean I should know what file extensions are or how to copy and paste. That is stuff that, like, why would I need to know that? I'm getting paid the big bucks, and some of the people I've dealt with are in admin, so it's their job to organize things. And like one admin person I dealt with at one point was like, "What does chronological mean, and what does alphabetical mean?" Like, how many years have you been a senior admin? Like 20? Like, you don't know what alphabetical or chronological is? And I tried to explain, they're like, I've never heard of that concept before. Putting things in the order of oldest to newest or newest to oldest, that's a new one. It's just like, to me, as someone who has a lot of intellectual curiosity, that just is very odd to me. It's odd to me if somebody can't do something very simple and you show them how to do it and you try to explain to them and maybe give them notes or write a guide for them or something. And their response is, no, I don't want to learn how to do it. I will just get you to do it. And I'm not talking about coding, I'm not talking about writing a web page. I'm talking about stuff like copying and pasting files or opening attachments or saving documents or just stuff like that. Like, we've been doing some tech stuff at work where some of the staff have been getting like new computers and stuff, and I've been helping out with that. And like the other day, someone like texted me and they're like, Argent emergency on sector 7, I need help. And then I'm like, okay, what do you need me to do? And they're like, I need to put my files on the share drive and like just copy and paste them onto the share drive. What's copy and paste? I'm just like, what? And they're like, I've never copied and pasted a file before. And I'm like looking at them, I'm like, you're 50. You've been working in an office for like 20 years. You've never copied and pasted a file before? What have you been doing this whole time? Like, it's just baffling. It's like people will not, like, sometimes people will be like, oh, how do I bold something in Word? How do I insert a table? Or what's a doc file? Or what's an XLS file? Or what's a PDF? And it's like, these aren't new people. These aren't people who transferred from other careers. These are people who are getting paid like 80, 90, $100,000 to do a job that requires them to use a computer 8 hours a day. And they don't know how to use copy and paste. And I'm talking about, like, they don't know how to do right click copy and paste. I'm not even talking about like Control C, Control V, Control X, Control V. That's way beyond their capacity. And my issue though is, once again, they just do not want to learn it. And if you try to explain it to them, they will get really indignant and say, like, I'm just not capable mentally of doing it. I should be paid as though I'm mentally capable of doing it, but I'm just not. And that is the attitude that I very often find whenever I'm trying to deal with any of this. Once again, there are some things people just can't do because they lack the intellectual capacity to do it or they lack the aptitude for it. I can't code. I can't code. I can do a little bit of syntax in SPSS. I have a learning disability. It gets messed up in my head. I can't. I just can't do it. I've tried to learn it and I can't. And if somebody legitimately cannot do something, then there's nothing wrong with that and nothing wrong with them asking for help. My issue is if your first response in any unfamiliar situation or any familiar situation is, I'm just going to ask a millennial to do it. I don't respect their time. I don't respect them as a person. They just have to do it for me solely because I'm too lazy and I don't want to learn how to do something. And I don't know, maybe it was just the way that I was raised, and it stuff like that bothers me. I guess because my parents raised me with like a work ethic and to care about what I'm doing and to try to do it as well as I can in a professional setting, of course. I'm not talking about my YouTube channel. I'm talking about when I'm at work and I'm preparing documents, sending emails, that. And I find most of the time it's like not even complex stuff. So like I'll be honest, when it comes to certain things, there are certain things that I really hate. Printers, for instance. I frequently will call them the single worst piece of modern technology. They suck, the drivers never work, the documents just won't print a lot of the time. Like sometimes the printer will just set itself to a different paper size to what you have on your computer, even though you didn't do anything. If you're trying to deal with network printers, it's a fucking like disaster. There will be like just menu after menu, and you have to pick the right like combination of stuff. And some programs will print, and some programs will. Setting up printers is a shit show. It's awful, and I can't blame anybody who has trouble with that because it's not intuitive. It doesn't work, and there's no consistency to it. The setting up process is very different for each printer and for each workplace. That's not something I very, very rarely I get asked about that. Um, I hate interface changes. I hate, what is it, Windows 11 now? I hate what they did with it. I don't get why they had to change the taskbar, because I like the taskbar being on the right hand side of my screen, but they disabled that. Like I know whenever I get a new Windows program, I immediately disable all the new features, and I get Windows Classic Shell to try to make it look like Windows Vista or Windows 7 because I don't like the new interface, and I will complain a lot about new interfaces that I feel are just not efficient, that are just unpleasant to look at. If features get removed, if unnecessary features get added, like I'll complain about all of that because that is something that I find is often doesn't make sense from like a commercial standpoint or like a basic design standpoint or something like that. You know, I 100% get if people complain about it. Like something boomers will complain about, and I agree with, is how new laptops don't have USB ports on. They'll have like they've gone from having like 4 or 5 to 2, and I agree that that is very frustrating, especially if you want to put a keyboard and mouse in. That's all you can do. I find that very frustrating. At the same time, though, and this is kind of a good topic to bring up with, there is no desire to fix the problem. It's like, oh, I need more USB ports. You want to get maybe a USB hub or USB extender. What's that? It's a thing you can plug multiple USB cables into. Well, that sounds too complicated for me. It's like, well, it's literally just you plug into your computer. It's like when you millennials say you literally just plug something in, that means I have to learn how to like code in Java when you say plug that in. And that's just kind of the attitude you get for stuff like that. And it's like I'll go and I'll sympathize with them and I'll try to show them some workarounds I've come up with, or I'll be like, yeah, this is nonsense, but we just have to deal with it. And they just won't accept that a lot of it. Something I find, and this is one of the things that I really hate, is there's almost this like accusation that if you say you don't know something, you're lying. And this is something pretty much every boomer, spiritual boomer, who's asked me for help doing something tech wise has ever said. They'll be like, well, how do I do this? I'm like, I don't know, I don't use this program. They'll be like, well, you have to figure it out. And like, well, you get paid 80 grand a year to use this program. You've been using it for 20 years. Why is it my job to learn how to use a piece of software unrelated to my project? Because you're too lazy to do it. It's just and if you say I'll have to go look it up, they'll get angry and they'll be like, why can't you just do it now? Just fix it for me, just finish it for me, just do it for me. But I don't know what this is. I don't know what the interface does. I don't know what any of these buttons do. And there's like, you're a millennial, you just know how to do these things. And I know whenever somebody comes to me with something new, like I haven't used before, they'll be like, can X do this? Can Y do this? Can it do this? Can it do that? Like, I started using Eventbrite this year for some stuff, and I hadn't really used it before, but I know like at some of the meetings we had where it was first brought up, they're like, Argent, can Eventbrite do this? I'm like, I don't know. I've never used the program before. And they're like, well, can it do this? And I'm like, I don't know. I haven't used it. And then they just keep repeating the question over and over again, like as if you just know these things. Like, I know whenever I often will get called over because they're like, where did I put my files? I'm like, why would I know where you put your files? I mean, to be fair, I have a pretty good guess. I have the self reflexivity to know where I fuck up and put files, so I know what they probably mean. But I just don't like the like entitlement that I don't need to know how to do my job. I need you to do it. I need you to research like basic stuff. And if it would once again, it would be one thing if like they wanted me to build something in Excel for them, like some sort of uh, spreadsheet that automatically tracks things or changes color for dates or stuff like that. Or I figure it out so I can teach them. But what it is they want me to learn how to do something. So every time they're feeling panicked or upset, they can call me over to do it for them. I think a really good example of this is whenever we have a discussion about document formatting, and this is something you have to deal with if you work at an office, every office has their own shitty formatting. Like, font needs to be a certain size, it needs to be aligned a certain way, you need a certain template. I find when you're dealing with boomers and spiritual boomers, the attitude will often be to just throw something on it and then just say, well, the end user will have to the admin will have to deal with it. Whoever has to process this will have to deal with it. I don't care personally about trying to produce a decent product, so I'm not gonna make this in like a. And a lot of the time, when you're making something, you can make it in a way that makes it easier for the person dealing with it. Like as you're writing it, you can go along and format it. If you notice things, you can fix them, and it takes a lot less time. It maybe takes 5 to 10 minutes when you're spending 60 minutes writing a document rather than like half an hour for the person to correct it. And I find the attitude is often like, why would I do this if it's someone else can do it for me? And I know like um one of our admins is like, Argent, whenever you send me documents, I don't really have to do that many corrections or changes to them. I'm like, well, I figured out like what it is that you want. And I make mistakes all the time. So yeah, I'd like you to check it and make sure I did it right. But if I can do it myself and it doesn't take me that much extra time, it's not respectful to you or your time or your effort for me to just send you something that I know is complete crap and expect you to just do my job. I just don't like stuff like that. Maybe it was just the way I was raised. Maybe it's just a thing called dignity. I don't know. There's also more than a little of the ungrateful servant trope. So, for those of you who don't know, it's my favorite Bible story. So, the ungrateful servant was he owed his master like we'll just say for the sake of this $100,000, and he couldn't pay it back, and his master was going to sell his children into slavery and throw him in debtor's prison. And the servant begged for mercy, and he cried and he said, "Please, master." And the master felt bad for him. And he's like, "Okay, your debt's forgiven. Okay, it's fine. I feel bad for you. It's well, I'll just let it go." And then he goes to a guy who owes him $1,000, and that guy begs for mercy, and he throws that guy in prison and sells his daughters into slavery. And then the original master finds out about it, and then he punishes him as severely as possible because he just behaved in a very hypocritical manner. And that's what I find with when you're dealing with a lot of boomers and spiritual boomers. They will like publicly humiliate you. They will excoriate you for the smallest of small mistakes. If you read their work and it's crap. Like I don't mean that there's a couple mistakes. I don't mean that like I get that it's a rough draft, but when their finished product is like complete bullshit, and you call out any of it, they will get super defensive, and then they will, um, they will just, I don't know, try to get revenge on you. And I as a rule, like if I'd rather discuss that kind of thing in private. I don't think it's appropriate to call out people unless there's really no other option in front of everybody else. Like that they made a mistake. I'd rather just go up to them afterward and say, hey, you might want to adjust that or something. But I find they generally do not have that attitude and they will not give you kind of the same courtesy. A lot of this I just feel is just basic professionalism and basic respect when it comes to doing boomer tech support. But I find just in general they don't want to learn. They get offended if you try to get them to learn. And there is just this profound sense of entitlement. And that they don't have to do like they'll complain about millennials all the time. Being lazy, wanting to work from home or whatever. But they like just don't show, I find in a lot of cases, concern for their work and for their quality. And generally speaking, I find millennials, for all their flaws, and Zoomers, for all their flaws, will normally at least make something of an effort to figure something before they go ask somebody. Especially if it's something they've done before, they will at least make an effort to learn, to make an effort to self improve. They don't take the attitude where I'm not even going to try because I'm too old. I'm too old to learn this. And it's also different. Once again, I keep stressing the $80,000 part because these people get paid. Oftentimes, they've been there like 20, 30 years and they make like 20, 30 grand more than you. And if this was in some private setting, then like whatever, it's not nearly as bad. But if you're billing your company for something like you don't give a shit about it, then I don't know. I'm sure a lot of people call me a wage cock. They'll say, um, wanting to provide value to your employer, wanting to be productive and efficient and do good at your job is like some is a boomer thing itself. But that's just kind of the way I am. For better or ill, that was the way that I was raised. I just can't find it in myself to resent my parents for raising me. So that is boomer tech support. God bless everybody and more content to come.